to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Ronu, and I created this show to help lawyers find happiness in life with a law degree. Together with my guests, we provide the knowledge, skills, insight, inspiration, and encouragement you need to find your happy. On today's show, I chat with Benton McTaggart. He is a special friend of mine who I am excited to share with you guys today because he works with his clients on transitions. And I think that's something that lawyers, myself included, are not always fantastic at. Even though we negotiate for a living, we're not always the best at negotiating on our own behalves. And I think that more often than not, we think that there aren't as many options as there are at the position that we're in, and we don't want to rock the boat. So instead of asking the questions we need to ask and having the conversations we should have, we tend to jump ship, hoping to find greener pastures elsewhere. And to be honest, when you do that, your problems tend to follow you. So one of the things I'm often advising my clients and advising young lawyers who are unhappy is to really look into whether they could find happiness where they are. And obviously that's easier said than done. So working with someone like Benton is such a wonderful tool for a young lawyer who's trying to transition from this place that they are in their career to one that's more fulfilling and more in line with what they believe to be their life trajectory. So I hope you enjoyed today's show, in which me and Benton chat about those conversations that you should be having, how to prepare for them, and really what you can expect when trying to transition in your career. Welcome back, you guys, to the Happy Lawyer Project. I am super excited to introduce you guys to Benton McTaggart. He's a career coach who focuses on helping high-achieving introverts achieve career success. Welcome, Benton.
Thank you, Akoma. I'm very honored to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to have you. I mean, we've been in touch for a while now and have been trying to set this up. So I'm super happy to get to share kind of your services and all of your knowledge with my audience. And I think it would be great if you could just start by sharing a brief description of who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I am a career coach who I work with mid to senior level high performing introverts. And my goal is to help them to stand out in the workplace so that they can be promoted faster, they can identify and build out their leadership legacies, and in the process get paid more. Or if they're thinking about making a major career transition, so perhaps, they're at that stage in their career where they want to focus on that next big thing, but they don't know what that next big thing is. My goal is to help them to figure that out. And being a coach has given me the purest joy of everything that I've done in my career. Now, you asked how I've actually gotten here. So just a very quick background on myself. Before being a coach, I worked for a couple of years in public relations and digital branding. And at one point in my career, I felt that there was something that was missing. It's just that I couldn't place a finger on it. So at first I thought that maybe I needed to sharpen my business acumen. So I went to business school, and then in pursuing business school, I thought that probably transitioning into brand management or management consulting was the most logical next step. But then I realized that wasn't doing it for me. So I was actually called to the profession of coaching in going through exploratory conversations. I met my former boss, who at the time was building out a coaching team. And he felt that I was a strong fit for what he was looking for. I said yes without reservations, and I dived right in, and I've never looked back. It's been the most amazing journey so far, and I've been doing this for over 4 years.
That's a great story. Was this former boss Bob?
It was. It was Bob Park, and you know him, so you know that he has an eye for talents that he felt would bring a different dimension to coaching. Because at the time he wanted to build out a team that had expertise, not necessarily in traditional job search coaching, but people who were from different industries. And in my case, I was coming from PR and branding. So I was a fit for what he was looking for.
Yeah, no, Bob is phenomenal. And he was really, I think, crucial in my own personal development. So I think very highly of him. And I am still in touch with him. He's definitely somebody I look up to and turn to for advice frequently.
Oh yeah, Bob is a treasure trove of advice. Like every single moment in working with him, there's always something for you to learn.
Yeah, no, it's always such, I don't know, blessing to have the opportunity to get people like that in your life. And I think that Bob came into my life at the right time, and he really did change the trajectory of my career. So I'm so grateful to him for that. But let's get back to what you do and stop, just waxing on about Bob. If you're out there, Bob, thank you. But back to Benton. So you work specifically with introverts. Can you talk a little bit about why you work with introverts and what you think makes this whole process of transitioning different for introverts than for extroverts?
Absolutely. So working with introverts, it's actually really dear and core to my heart, largely because I'm an introvert myself. And I've sort of gone through different phases in my career where I have felt that there was something wrong with me. Like I wasn't bold enough. I didn't have a specific presence. And what that meant essentially is that I held myself back because I adopted certain external beliefs about how I should be. And for whatever reason, I had resistance to going after specific opportunities. And in reflecting on that, I realized that for me, it was the fact that I was being incongruent with who I am. So I wasn't being authentic. And so a lot of opportunities passed by, I probably missed out on promotions. I didn't take on projects because I felt that I needed to have a similar personality. And I strongly believe that my story and what I've experienced is representative of what a lot of other people, other introverts are facing out there in their careers. And they're held back because, there's this idea that the ideal type of worker, the ideal type of leader is someone who exhibits extroverted qualities. And I decided that, as a coach, the best gift that I can deliver is working with these people who have incredible gifts, gifts that the world needs, and helping them to move from, become more of who they are essentially, so that they can function at their peak and help to make a real difference in our society. The trick for most introverts, when you think about things like getting promoted, or even becoming leaders or navigating our major career transitions, is that or how we show up. We tend to be reserved or quiet. Our energy is usually derived internally. So we typically aren't the most gregarious person you'd come across in the room. We aren't necessarily the ones who will sort of think very quickly on our feet and come up with something really, like a smart comeback in a meeting. And those qualities are valued and rewarded in corporate America. Those are the types of people the ones who are able to build really deep relationships very quickly, who are able to solve problems right on their feet, who are charismatic and very open. They tend to be promoted. They tend to take on leadership role, and for introverts it's a lot more difficult because of the energy that you have to exhibit. So I felt that it makes perfect sense that I would help these people to recognize that you can still be who you are as an introvert and get promoted really quickly, or become the leader that you've always wanted to do. It's just a matter of recognizing what your strengths are and using those to ensure that you continue to transition in your career.
I think that one of the things that really resonates for me is the idea that you can be yourself as an introvert and excel in these kinds of corporate environments, because I also am an introvert, which is, I think, one of the reasons I really liked you when we first met. And a lot of people don't think I'm an introvert because I have this podcast and because I'm really sociable.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I do better one-on-one. And it is really exhausting for me to be in groups of people, to be in really high, kind of social, small talk kind of environments. But, if the group is small enough and if I know people, then for me, it works quite well. And having to learn those things about myself and realize that they're not problems that I have to overcome, but just personal characteristics and how to leverage them in my workplace. So I can definitely see why having a coach who knows kind of the introvert personality and doesn't just assume it's a negative thing, but can help you use that to your advantage and work with those personal characteristics instead of trying to hide them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm really happy too that what I'm hearing from you is the piece around self-awareness. So understanding, okay, this is how I show up. This is I tend to do better in one-on-one situations. How can I use this to my advantage? And for some of us, like yourself and myself, we recognize that these are actual gifts and we can still use them to be successful. However, for others, it's a block. It's that limiting belief that you have to be something else in order to be successful. And so what you find is that we don't go after success because we don't think that we're going to make it happen. So coaching becomes a powerful tool and support in helping you to move past some of those beliefs.
So I want to take it one step back. You are somebody who was in PR, who was in marketing. What makes someone who in this case has never been a lawyer or has never been an executive, how do you get qualified to coach or consult or work with people who have an experience that's completely different from yours?
I laugh when I get this. I hear you ask this question because I hear it so often, and I will say it's a very reasonable question because the truth is you want to feel that you're working with someone who brings some degree of credibility, of expertise, and for the most part, someone who might have been in your shoes. And I would say, if I'm thinking about this, let's say from a consulting perspective, absolutely. That's something that I feel is highly relevant because then a consultant is giving advice. So you want someone who is obviously an expert in whatever realm or space that you're working with them on. As a coach, however, my philosophy is that all the people I work with, including attorneys, pharmacists, people from different industries and functional backgrounds, they already have the answers to the challenges and the solutions that they're facing. And what that means when I sort of break that down is that my clients are already experts in the situations that they're facing. And my job as a coach is to help them to find the very best answers and solutions for whatever situation that they're facing. And that's where my expertise as a coach, for example, in career transitions, my expertise as a coach in getting promoted, those coaching skills become absolutely fundamental because my focus is on you. I'm focusing on your inner desire, your motivations, the things that make you tick, the things, the blind spots that you probably don't see, so that you can bring those things to the light and ensure that once you're clear on those things, it makes it easy for you to implement the things that you're already an expert at because you already have the answers. So the how and the what of what you need to do becomes really easy because you get clarity on what it is that's driving you. What's your sort of core energy? What are the inner desires and goals? Or what are the dreams that you have and the goals beyond the goals that you've stated? Those are all the things that I listen for when I coach my clients, so that when they walk away, it's a truly transformational experience. So it's not just you come to me and say that you want to make a transition and we dive right into, okay, here's what you need to do. But I use my expertise in coaching to help you figure out what's the best way to do that.
I love hearing different coaches talk about their process because I do think there's such a variety of definitions and approaches to coaching. I have obviously my own feelings about what makes a good and a real and a legit coach. And I think one that's based on kind of what you're talking about, a collaborative process in which the coach brings an expertise in kind of pulling the best out of people.
Exactly.
And the client brings a willingness to, participate in the journey. And then together they create a strategy and a solution for whatever they created the relationship around. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. So I would love to jump into kind of the areas in which you work with your clients, because I think these are definitely areas in which lawyers need a lot of help, especially big law associates, because, you get your job and then for many of us, you then are on like a lockstep salary. Mm-hmm. And so you never have to negotiate for your salary. You rarely have to negotiate for your bonus, even things like maternity leave, vacation days. It's all standardized across the industry. And so people can go 5, 6, 10 years having never really having the leverage that they, at least not thinking they have any leverage to negotiate. And so they kind of accept what is being given to them. So for people who are possibly coming up to a time when they may need to negotiate on their own behalf, but I think everybody is coming up on that time because I think there's always room for negotiation. I would love to know what you think is at the root of really being able to negotiate for what you want.
Yeah, no, and I'll even take a step back and say that what you see with attorneys, for the most part, not just because they're on like set bands for what they would earn and bonus pools, etc. It's pretty common across other industries. Actually, I've worked with a lot of clients who've never had a negotiation conversation in their life, and a big part of that has to do with, this is expectation. This is a norm. So I probably don't need to ask for more, or it's more about the sort of internal stuff that's going on. Because most people tend to feel, a bit queasy or nervous about having a negotiation conversation. Now, one of the things that I encourage that before doing any form of negotiation is understanding that a negotiation conversation, it's really about achieving a particular goal. May it be for you to get an extra bump in your salary, or for you to work from home, or whatever it is. It's about achieving a particular goal. And deeply rooted in that is understanding that really have an effective negotiation, you have to find balance, right? So there need to be what I would say a win-win opportunity for both yourself and the person you're negotiating with. May it be your boss or the HR team or your business partner. And in order to find balance, there are two essential things that you really want to have full control and understanding of one. So the first is preparation, preparing for the conversation, and within that, there are a couple of things. So, for example, if you're going to negotiate, let's say as an attorney, you want to get an extra bump in your pay, then you want to know what you're worth. You want to understand what's your value in the market. That's the first place that you want to start. And there are a couple ways of doing that. You can do research. There are places like Robert Half that gives adjusted salary or compensation information for what attorneys should make. But I feel like one of the best ways to get that sort of real-time intel is to actually talk to other attorneys who are in comparable roles, in comparable companies, either where you are or in other companies. So, having that sort of real-time data helps. So you want to understand your market value. You also want to be clear on your motivation. So what do I mean by this? Let's say you are asking for the opportunity to work from home twice per week. What's driving that? Is it something intrinsic? Is it that you perhaps have a new family and you want to get more time to spend with your family? How much is that worth? So you want to understand that. Is it that, you're facing financial pressures, maybe to pay your mortgage or to pay off your student loans, and as a result, it's more of an extrinsic factor that's driving that. So it's more about the carrots and sticks that you can get. So the extra bump in pay, just being really clear on what's driving your decision to have a negotiation, because that's going to help to shape how the conversation goes, as well as sort of having what I call your why, right? So it's a very compelling reason as to why you deserve whatever you're asking for. And it has to be something that's unique to you. It cannot be something that's sort of very generic and canned. And that's why those first two pieces are so important in understanding the drivers as well as your market value. And then you want to sort of move the focus external. So start thinking about, in your preparation phase, thinking about, okay, so the person I'm negotiating with, what could be some of the potential limitations and objections that I might face. Start making a list of those things and coming up with potential alternatives or win-win solutions to those things. And then the final thing in the preparation phase, which most people do not do, is focusing on what you can deliver in the future. So for example, if you're asking for a raise, most people tend to focus on what they've delivered in the past. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't. Yes, you absolutely can, but it makes more sense for you to talk about how will you get what you're getting be a win for both yourself and the person you're negotiating with in the future. So, for example, recently I had a client, and she wanted to get a bump in pay, and she was asking for a pretty big bump based on where she was after she did the research and see what other people were being paid in the market. And, in having a conversation, we realized that this would have been really tough for her to pull off without having a very compelling reason as to what she can deliver for her company. And essentially what she eventually settled on was that she realized that her boss wanted to shift his focus to international market expansion. He wanted to do more of that, but he had a lot of other domestic sales account under his belt, and that was something that she was perfectly capable of taking over. So she made the argument about what she can deliver in the next year around the domestic accounts and sort of freeing up his time so he could actually focus on that big goal in going international. So the long and short is always, in your preparation phase, come up to some sort of future benefit that you would deliver. Now, under the second thing that I encourage that you think about is your actual approach when you have the negotiation conversation, because that's really important. And what the research has shown is that powerless communication, so communication where you sort of use really tentative talk, so, stuff like how might we instead of you should, that helps in the negotiation conversation. It's important to understand that in negotiating, you're really asking, you're not necessarily countering. So taking on a more collaborative approach, that tends to yield better results in the long run. Now, of course, there are going to be some situations where you probably just want to be competitive, and that might be based on who you're negotiating with, because the other person across the table might just not want to collaborate with you, and it's just an all or nothing situation, and there are risks to that. But understand in general that being collaborative as best as possible, trying to find win-win solution for both yourself and the person, tends to yield better results. It's also advised to ask problem solving questions, and that's one of the areas where introverts tend to excel, because when they prepare and they do all their in-depth research and they think about the possible limitations and objections, it puts them in a really great place to start asking very detailed and problem solving question that sort of helps the person to get in your shoes and understand your perspective. And the final thing that I'll say under your approach in the actual conversation is that less talking tends to lead to more. And this is something when I go through my clients, it doesn't make much sense. But what happens is that sometimes when let's say you're asking for a 30% bump in your pay and you ask your boss, most people, if there's some sort of silence, they will try to fill that silence because they feel uncomfortable. So they'll say, it's okay, or we could do this. But the truth is, sometimes the person on the other side of the table, they're thinking about how they can make that work. So get comfortable with the idea of silence, because that can lead to a lot more in your negotiation outcome. So to sort of summarize what I've just said, because I know it's a mouthful, definitely you want to do two big things. So understand that your goal is you want to come to some sort of win-win opportunity, some sort of balance. And a part of that is you have to do the work. So you have to prepare, and you also have to take on a more sort of collaborative, poreless communication approach to the conversation. And if you're interested, for example, and you want to sort of go deeper into the poreless communication approach, and there's a really brilliant book written by Adam Grant called Give and Take.
Yep. That's one of the first books that we talked about when we first met.
Yeah. So that dives into that topic. And Getting to Yes as well is a really great book on negotiation for anyone who sort of want to sort of get a quick up on how they can, preserve relationships in high stakes conversations like negotiations. That would definitely help.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great advice. And I especially like the collaborative perspective or approach, because it's almost like you're enlisting them to help you solve this problem together.
Exactly.
And so it's not you against them. It's we both want me to get this thing because we both would love for this to work out. So how can we get to a place where we're both happy with the solution? And it also is nice because if it doesn't work out, you didn't create tension or burn a bridge.
Exactly.
So I love all of that. And I think that transitions nicely into when it doesn't work out. So say that you're negotiating, you know that where you're at, you need some changes in order to stay. And after negotiating with them, it looks like that's not going to happen, or they weren't able to get as far as you would have liked. So when do you make a transition? How do you make a transition? And kind of what are the belief systems around making this transition that people kind of fall prey to that lead them off on the wrong track?
Yeah. So I'll
There's a lot there.
Yeah. So I'll answer the first question around, okay, so I have this negotiation conversation and things don't work out. So essentially we haven't really come to a reasonable solution that helps me. There are a couple of things that you could do here. And one of those things is to see if, okay, can you sort of put this back on the agenda? So let's say you're at a really low compensation and you want it to get to a particular level just to help you to survive financially, and your boss says, you know what, I can't make this happen. You might want to sort of say, how might we explore this in the future? For example, would it be okay for us to revisit this conversation in the next 6 months, next 3 months? You could do that. So that's one option, to always walk away from the negotiation conversation with some sort of action or outcome. Even if it doesn't necessarily give you what you want, you might be able to set up a future conversation. You probably could, look at revisiting your performance goals and see if there are anything there that you could do to sort of stretch yourself so that, you make it possible. You ultimately might also have to answer the question around, is this the right place for me to be in right now? And sometimes the answer is going to be no. You need to make a move, and that's where the transition tends to come into play. And that gets me to the second part of your question around the common limiting beliefs that I typically come across with attorneys when they think about making their next transition. So one of the more common ones is that if I leave my private practice or the current role that I'm in, I'm never going to make as much as I was making
Oh,
right now.
amen.
So there's that. That's a really, really big one. The second one is that it's too late to do what I really want to do because I've invested so much
This
time.
is such a good list.
Yeah, tens of thousands of dollars in pursuing a law degree, and you tons of energy in passing the bar, and that makes perfect sense because the profession of law, I have so much respect for it because you guys are well trained. You have to go through a really competitive and very demanding process to become a lawyer. So it makes perfect sense that this becomes a block for most people. And sort of deeply rooted within this is the sort of idea that it would be a very expensive mistake if they were to pursue something else, given all the time and resources that they've invested in law. And the third big one that I tend to hear in sort of varying degrees is that I'll never be able to find my passion. So might as well, I just stick to what I'm currently doing. And usually when I dig deeper, a lot of people tend to see fashion as this really far-fetched sort of go off and save the world type of feeling and experience. So most people feel that I'm not going to accomplish that. But the truth is passion means different things to different people. And at the core, it's really about having interest in something and having some sort of deep engagement with that. So those are the common limiting beliefs that I typically come across when I work with attorneys.
I think that those are spot on. And just to be clear, when we say that those are limiting beliefs, what we mean is that those are stories that you tell yourself in your own head that become obstacles from figuring out what the true opportunities are before you, I guess is one way to put it. And I know there's a lot of people, because I held that belief. I definitely was somebody who for a very, very long time thought that if I left big law, it would mean I'd have to take a big pay cut. And I just wasn't ready to do that. And I just felt like I had to constantly prepare myself for that. And now I realize that is not even close to true. There are lots of people who make lots of money who aren't in big law. And likewise, I had the same beliefs about, if I spent all this time and money, I needed to get my time and money out of it. And it was almost like if I went to law school and then practiced law just long enough to pay off my law degree, then I'd never even got to enjoy the money,
Yeah.
So it felt like, but that doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't throw good money after bad.
Exactly. And the truth is about the limiting beliefs, which you've beautifully summarized. There are blocks, and they're usually blocks that they come from external factors, right? So it might be stories that you've heard, or it might be something that you sort of picked up when you were a child, or some sort of external circumstances, or you were told that, okay, you go pursue your law degree, you have to go and work in a big law firm, and you have to spend X number of years, and you have to sort of follow this path to get to partner, and so you sort of internalize those beliefs, and then they become obstacles for you. They sort of move you into inaction. You don't do anything because you bind to those beliefs.
And I think the other problem is that you make decisions based on the idea that those beliefs are true. And one of the very recent realizations, or I guess not that recent, maybe 2 years ago, someone said to me, that beliefs are just thoughts you keep thinking.
Yes.
And I was like, what? And she's like, if you just stop thinking it, you'll stop believing it. And it just blew my mind.
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, there's obviously caveats to that, but that at its very core is truth, right? And if you just believe the only way to make money is in big law, then your brain is really shut down from believing, pursuing, even exploring other possibilities because it can't even process the information. And I don't think people realize how much information is inputted into our brain and how our brain selects which information to remember and keep based on our beliefs. Right?
Exactly, especially the ones that protect you, because you hold this belief, right? At the root, it's probably something that's protecting you. Because if you think that the only way for you to earn a particular level of income is to be in a big law firm, then you're not going to ever step outside of that zone. If you internalize that belief.
Yep. And what's going to happen is that whenever there's a job opportunity in which you can earn more, you'll be very suspicious of it. And you'll think there's some catch and that it's not legit. Or if you hear somebody else has an opportunity, you're going to think they're lying. Your brain is always going to try to make the story work. And it's not going to process that information as true because you aren't willing. Your mind isn't open to the possibility of it being true because it conflicts with what you already believe.
Exactly.
I just find limiting belief stuff so, so interesting because I am working through a very, very challenging limiting belief of my own currently that I know a lot of people struggle with and is one that I continue to struggle with. I, in fact, have been talking to my mother about it a lot because she also struggles with the same limiting belief and she's the one who handed it down to me.
So it comes from external. So it's something that from your environment.
Yeah. I mean, it's both. I mean, it was external as a child. So it's the belief that you have to work hard to make money.
Ah. So the question that I would ask you around that, Okoma, is how true is that belief for you?
So it's so interesting you say that because I've always felt like it was supposed to be true. So back to limiting beliefs, whenever I feel like I wasn't working hard and I was making a lot of money, I would quit that job because I would be so terrified I was going to get fired. And they were going to catch on to the fact that they were paying me all this money for not doing enough work. Or I would spend all the money faster than I was earning it so that I didn't have to deal with it. And all of this was subconscious. I wasn't doing this consciously. Yeah. But now looking back, I realized that that's how I handled situations in which that belief was being questioned. And as a result, I think like you said, when you don't know, you miss opportunities. And I think I did miss opportunities in which I could have made money in easier ways than being a lawyer. But I just didn't think that was possible or sustainable. But logically, I know there are people out there who don't work, quote unquote, hard. They do challenging work, but it's not, quote unquote, hard.
Yeah.
And they do really well. And they're not all bad people. They're not all scam artists. They're not all these terrible things that my brain wants me to believe they are. Because my brain wants me to say that, well, that's, those are the lucky people. Those are the people who are taking advantage of people. You're a hardworking, good person.
Yeah. And the truth is, if you're passionate about something, usually, think about a time when you're doing work and you've just lost yourself in work and you aren't even conscious of the time, or you might step back and how did I accomplish this in such short space of time? Once you're immersed in something, you're so engaged in it, it doesn't feel like hard work. But your mind tricks you into thinking that if you're not quote unquote working hard, then you're not really doing anything, and it's time for a change.
I think that's right. That's right on. And if you read books on kind of the top leaders in the space and the entrepreneurs who work in a really creative space, the Elon Musks, the Richard Bransons, that's how they do it, right? It's not about just grinding out 20 hours of work a day. It's about following their passion and loving it so much that they don't mind working on it 12 to 14 hours a day because it doesn't feel like work.
Absolutely.
So I could chat with you forever, but I'm looking at the time and realizing we need to wrap up. And I want you to get a chance to chat a little bit about, some resources that people can look into if they're coming up to a time when they want to negotiate things, whether that's a salary, bonus, flex time, more vacation days. whatever it is they want to negotiate, or perhaps they're in a transition period and thinking about making a pivot in their career, are there any good resources that you have for people that you would be willing to share?
Yeah, so in negotiating, there are actually three books that I highly recommend. For me, those have been really self-sufficient. So the first is Give and Take by Adam Grant, and that's more about the sort of approach that you take to those conversations and around relationships. The second is Get Into Yes. And that one has a very extensive overview of the most successful approaches to negotiating. And then the third is Harvard Business Review actually has a series on negotiation. So it's just really nice to package all the sort of best practices, approach, and frameworks that you can use for negotiating conversations. Something that, you can probably read in a couple hours. So those are the three resources that I would highly recommend if you want to get better at having negotiation conversations.
That's great. I love both those books, and I think anything the Harvard Business Review does is fantastic. I'm a huge fan, so I look forward to checking out that content. I just wanted to share a story that I thought of kind of while you were talking about that, about negotiating and how you should be really creative with what you negotiate. I recently had a friend who works really hard, bills, well above her billing requirement, and has always been kind of a workhorse, but she loves vacation. And so she basically negotiated 1 month off a year. So she's willing to work like a workhorse, but the kinds of vacations that she wants to take, she wants to go to, hike in Chile for 3 weeks, or she wants to go to India and,
Yeah.
And she just can't do that working as hard as she works. If she takes 2 weeks off and then comes back, it's just can't be done. And so I was just thinking about how when you negotiate, there's a balance between what you think you can get and what you want.
Yes.
And so I think sometimes people just start from what they think they can get without thinking about what fits their lifestyle. And then to your collaborative point, kind of how can we figure out a solution together? And then to your point about the future, if I still hit my hours in the other 11 months, out no money, and I get to stay here and everyone's happy. So she just reminded me of that story. And I was, so proud of her for thinking of that and managing to get that through.
Yeah. And I also think too, as you mentioned, that creativity in negotiation, that's an actual skill, that you want to hone. And that's why it's so important to start thinking through the possible objections and limitations that you might face, because that's when you're going to find that your creative, the sort of right side of your brain sort of kicks in, and you start coming up with, okay, so if this doesn't work, I could do this and stuff like that. But that's a really, really great story.
The surprising thing is that even though we're lawyers and what we do for a living is negotiate, we are terrible. Like most people, we're terrible at negotiating on our own behalf.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would just advise my listeners, you have the skills, you just have to practice using them for yourself.
Yeah. And a tip that I actually learned from Bob, bringing him back in the conversation, is that it's usually difficult for us to negotiate for ourselves. So sometimes it might make sense when we're having that negotiation conversation, we negotiate, and thinking about someone else. So it might be, if you have kids, maybe you're doing it for your son who is going to go to college, really soon, or you're going to do it for your husband, that's going to allow you to, for example, pay off your mortgage faster. When you're sort of acting as an agent to someone else, it makes the process, more bearable for you to do, and it makes it easier for you to have the conversation.
Yep. For sure. I use that technique all the time. It's almost like an out-of-body experience. Like, if I was my own best friend, what advice would I give myself?
Yeah. So
what's the best way for people to follow you, to learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, so I can be found at my website at www.bentonandbob.com. bentonmctaggart.com. And there you'll find, so right now I've just launched a free ebook on the 6 steps to getting promoted. So that's something that you can find there, as well as follow my blogs. You can subscribe for my newsletter and get more details around the coaching that I do around getting promoted or making your next big career transition or building out your personal brand. You can get all that detail on my website.
Fantastic. And I'll include those links in the show notes as well, so people can head over to the website and get that information if they're in their car or on a run right now and can't write all that down. So thank you so much for being a part of the project, coming on, sharing your story with us today. And before I let you go, I would love to know your thoughts on what you think separates lawyers who are happy from lawyers who struggle to find happiness in life with a law degree.
Great question. So I would say one really, really big thing, and that the lawyers who are happy and people who are happy in general, they recognize that happiness is actually a state of being that's generated internally. So it's something that you have control over, as opposed to, most people who sort of fall into the idea that I will be happy when I accomplish some sort of goal, which each time you accomplish those goals, you realize that the goalposts move even farther. So there is something else that you need to do, and you're never going to be happy. These people who realize that they have control over their happiness, they'll do consistent activities on a daily basis that helps you feel that happiness. So things like meditating, exercising, having some sort of gratitude practice, exercising some sort of signature strength, helping others, or, having wonderful experiences. Those are some of the things that fuel their happiness, and it's something that they have control over. And on a daily basis, they have deliberate and consistent activities that helps to fuel that state of being.
I love that. Happiness is a state of being. I think that's a wonderful place to leave it. Thank you so much, Benton, for coming on today.
Thank you too. And it's great chatting with you.
Thank you for joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. Please head over to my website, www.thehappylawyerproject.com, for more information from today's show. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave me your thoughts on the show. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or follow me on Instagram. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to head over to iTunes to subscribe and review the show. As you know, each rating helps more listeners find the show and helps me get awesome guests on here for you guys. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, head over to my website and let me know, or send me an email at okema, OKEOMA, @thehappylawyerproject.com. A special thanks to everyone who's left a review, sent me an email, or reached out to me in any way. I appreciate you. Thank you again for spending this time with me, and if you would like to learn more about working in your gift and living your passion, head over to the website for a free gift. Until next time, bye!